Welcome to CinemaSpection. I'm Tim.
I'm Corinne.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to listen to us reminisce about a 1984 cult classic that helped launch a new era in special effects. Ready? Prepare for blastoff with The Last Starfighter.
Alex Rogan lives in a small trailer park in the California mountains. He has a dream to go to college.
You guys think I'm gonna hang out here, watch you shine your pickup? Forget it, man. I'm doing something with my life.
Start a career.
You really are leaving here, aren't you?
Of course I'm going away. We're both going away.
Both of us, Alex.
And most of all, to get out.
You get your chance. Important thing is when it comes, you gotta grab it with both hands.
Then, one night, a mysterious stranger offers Alex an opportunity he never dreamed of.
Who are you?
I'm Centauri, and you may... No, you must trust me implicitly. Get in.
Nothing Alex Rogan has ever imagined could prepare him for what he is about to experience.
Hey.
Why was Alex chosen? And will he ever return?
Where are we going?
Trust me. Oh, you're gonna love it. Love it. Look out! Oh, dear.
The Last Starfighter. His adventure in space is about to begin.
Young Alex Rogan dreams of escaping from his humdrum existence as handyman at the rundown trailer park where he lives with his family. With his prospects for going to college dim, it seems like the most Alex will achieve is breaking the high score record on a shoot-'em-up arcade game called Starfighter. But little does he know the game is actually an alien aptitude test to find potential pilots to fight an interstellar war. Recruited by a fast-talking alien hustler named Centauri to defend the planet Rylos from the invading Kodan Armada, Alex balks at the responsibility. But with alien agents hunting him on Earth and Rylos left defenseless following an attack, Alex and his reptilian navigator Grig are the only hope of stopping the Armada from taking over the rest of the galaxy. As usual, we'll be discussing The Last Starfighter in detail, so if you haven't seen the film and wish to remain unspoiled, we recommend watching the movie before listening to the rest of this episode. The Last Starfighter was released by Universal Pictures on July 13th, 1984, where it opened against The Muppets Take Manhattan. It was shot on a budget of $15 million and made $28 million, so recouped its money, was a modest hit, and decently well regarded by critics. So, what's your history with The Last Starfighter?
I'm glad you said history because I don't have a first memory of this film. I was 5 when it came out, so I probably was 6 or so when I saw it for the first time. And of course I was obsessed with Star Wars, and this kind of just scratched the itch for new space stories. I hadn't seen it for over 20 years until we sat down for this. Some of it holds up really well, but most of it has a tipping of the hat to so many different films that were popular in that era or that it was emulating. So I found it distracting. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just
I can't disagree. We were checking off a list of different things from Star Wars, from E.T., from all these various movies.
I mean, down to the score. The score feels like it is riffing off the motifs of Luke Skywalker's theme from New Hope, and also Indiana Jones for some reason. And then, of course, for some reason as well, some of it sounds like Spaceballs, but that doesn't work chronologically, so it's just maybe that Spaceballs sounds a lot like The Last Starfighter.
They're all borrowing from the same well.
I know. They're all dipping into the Williams well.
I did see this in the movies when it first opened, and it's funny because this was the period when I was terrified by absolutely everything, and I really enjoyed the movie, but it traumatized me for a little bit. That moment when Centauri first turns around and has that alien face, I freaked out to the point where my dad had to turn around and be like, calm down. And as soon as he said that, we see Beta like forming in the bed with its weird inflatable face. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty freaked out for the first half of this movie, but that kind of went away by the time we get to the second half with things blowing up. But I definitely enjoyed it. Looking at it now, yeah, it's very derivative. It's a light piece of fluff, but it is a lot of fun. And it's so good-natured, you know? Seeing a lot of action movies these days that are so cynical, and this one pretty much wears its heart in its sleeve. It's not really trying to do much more than it's presenting, and I kind of admire it for that. It's just a nice, simple, good time at the movies.
It is, but it does suffer from cardboard cutouts because of this. And I know in your introduction you call it a humdrum existence in this trailer park, basically, but all of the neighbors know each other and they all seem to be friends and they communicate through telephone, not the kind you pick up and put to your ear, but the game that you play as a kid. So they're just yelling house to house a message to get to somebody else. So I think we missed an opportunity to explore how your normal, regular life is just as interesting as the one you aspire to somewhere else. It's just a different sort of interesting that you've grown very accustomed to.
There are certain characters that I can really see how they could have fleshed them out to make them a lot more interesting. We'll get into that in a little bit. But one thing that I think to start with this one is that it capitalizes on the popularity of video games. And
absolutely.
This was released right in the middle of the video games crash. So by this point, the Atari consoles were all over the place. Everything had been kind of saturated and then was starting to downturn. Arcades, some of them were starting to close down, which I think is interesting given the backstory we get from Centauri that this particular machine was meant for Vegas. Like, maybe it was at an arcade that got closed down and was going to be shipped off somewhere else, and it just happened to end up here.
And the idea that it ends up in the middle of nowhere, basically, is very interesting.
So when it comes to video games, how about your history with games? Were you a big gamer back in the 80s? Or?
I am staring at all of our games right now. Yes, I was very much a gamer. Atari, the Commodore 64, we had just about every system up until Genesis, and then we were poor, so it didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, that's what you did. You read, you played with friends, and you played video games.
Yeah, we had the old RCA, the Atari 2600.
Which one was the RCA?
It was like Pong. It was a lot of very simple games like that.
Oh, we did have that one. Because I was trying to remember. It's the one where it's like a big thing that you set on your lap and you move the dials. Yeah, we had that one too. We
had a VIC-20. We couldn't even get a Commodore 64. We had the VIC-20, which had almost nothing for games. Our dad had the ColecoVision one. We eventually had a Nintendo. We got our secondhand from a friend and Genesis. And of course, we actually had a decent number of arcades in our area, so we were going to them all the time. I was an avid gamer. I'm not what on the internet they'd call a hardcore gamer. I'm
definitely a casual gamer at this point because I'm pulled in too many different directions to devote myself to games as much as I'd like to. Plus, I have difficulties with my hands. So if I overstrain my hands, I can't actually do any work for so long that I have to be very careful when I play video games. How long, when, the timing is. This is all about getting old, guys.
I go through these weird periods of like playing a game intensely and then like not dusting off the console for weeks.
Yeah, you remember the solid like 2 months you'd come home and I was playing Dr. Mario?
Oh yeah. And I'm not great, I'll admit. I keep at it, and that's usually how I beat certain games, but I'm not a great game player. I don't have the skill that would lead to me being recruited by somebody.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like we're getting off track just a little bit, but I could talk about video games for an entire podcast.
Okay, so here's the big question. Considering the concept of this film where a game is actually an aptitude test, what video game would you want to be recruited for? What game would be the one that you could stop an alien invasion or something?
I thought about this one for a while because, I mean, when you think, I want to be part of that game, when you think like Battlefront, like, yeah, I'll go in Battlefront. And then you're like, no, because there's fighting and people could shoot me and I don't want to die. So what I actually ended up landing on was Yoshi's Woolly World. I would rock the shit out of that video game, and I think I could defeat an invading force with yarn.
You have been recruited by Yoshi to defend the Woolly World against the, I don't know.
Oh, I don't even need to defend Woolly World. I could defend like any world with a ball of yarn.
See, in terms of video games, I don't think I'm actually good enough to be recruited, but like Rampage would probably be the one. If you need me to turn into a werewolf and destroy a city, I could do that.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Oh, the other one that might be fun is what was it, Vice City?
Oh God, jeez.
But I would not. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Saints Row?
Yeah, Saints Row. But with the stipulation that I don't want to be inserted into the game unless I have the god powers. Like, once I can fly, I'm on board.
See, having seen you in arcades, I could imagine aliens coming down to recruit you for Dr. Mario, because I've seen how good you are at that. That was kind of amazing.
I have no idea why that particular game just calms me. How long was I playing that? Like 3 hours?
3 hours
3
on
hours.
the same quarters. That kid next to you that wanted to play it was getting pissed. It was kind of amazing to watch.
1 quarter, 3 hours. It was a good game.
That was the whole time in the arcade. It just kept coming over. Yep, she's still good.
Yeah, but we had to leave before I was ready, so I had to actually kill myself on Dr. Mario.
You could have kept going, I bet.
It was fun.
So that's the thing. I imagine this storyline today, it wouldn't work as well. You'd have like the Gamergate idiots, or I can imagine Alex Rogan beats the record on Starfighter, everything's great, and all of a sudden Billy Mitchell walks up with a videotape and goes, "Oh, actually, look at this. I beat the record myself several weeks ago, and it's more." So as we mentioned, there's a lot of influences from this one from particular places. The screenwriter, Jonathan Blakeley, was inspired by seeing a little kid playing a video game in an arcade at the same time that he was reading The Once and Future King, and kind of got this flash of, oh, Excalibur, a video game being the new Excalibur that you have to draw from the stone. Greg makes reference to up to your old Excalibur tricks.
Yes, I thought that was great.
Should we interpret that as Centario was actually Merlin, that he tried this many, many years before?
Yes. Yes. Also, it's worth noting that the Starfighter symbol is a sword with wings. It's literally a flying Excalibur.
I'm embarrassed that I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice that? Oh my God. I thought I was saying something really obvious.
No, that's really good. I didn't even really clue in on that.
Yeah.
But clearly, this was, at least in the studio's eyes, a way to capitalize on Star Wars. Because post-Star Wars, you had so many space opera movies.
Oh, definitely.
Ones like Battle Beyond the Stars, which is a ton of fun, Space Raiders, Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, which is silly, but I still enjoy it.
Even sillier, Ice Pirates.
Ice Pirates, definitely. Everyone was trying to capitalize on the space genre. And a lot of them were really low-budget ones, too, but it was part of that shift in science fiction from movies like The Andromeda Strain in 2001 into summer crowd pleasers. And beyond that, you also had, right around this time, Spielberg had just hit with E.T., and you had this kind of subgenre, the backyard adventures, these movies where very ordinary people in very average neighborhoods go on these crazy adventures. Poltergeist, to some degree, The Goonies, definitely, Gremlins, Back to the Future, Explorers. All those movies kind of have this idea of you're just this average kid, and something amazing happens, and all of a sudden you're on this crazy, fantastic adventure.
What year was Fright Night again?
Fright Night was 85.
I know it doesn't make sense timeline-wise, but it does kind of fit in. Alex's younger brother, Louis, goes on a backyard adventure of his very own. It's very Fright Night in that there is something in his intimate space. For Fright Night, it was the neighborhood, the neighbor, and for Louis, literally his brother. So we have body snatchers actually cropping up in that one as well.
Yeah, you could almost imagine a whole mini movie that's all about Louis getting paranoid about what's going on with his brother.
And not understanding that it's a robot from space and that it's not his brother, but it's something else. And if this movie actually happened, we would have had the Louis character in one of two positions. The robot is evil and must be destroyed, or the robot needs help. And I know they had to do reshoots on the movie because people loved Beta so much. I really wish they'd just gone the extra distance and woven in a little bit more of a storyline for that.
Yeah, that's actually something I want to bring up in a little bit. There are directions I think they really could have taken that and his relation with the other characters in the trailer park that would have been interesting. And because of all these influences, director Nick Castle and Blakeley were both very aware of that. They tried to play them down as best they could in certain circumstances. The original script for this was set in the suburbs, and Castle and Blakeley realized E.T. did that, you can't do that again. So they found this trailer park locale, which actually I think works better because it does feel a lot more remote and the kind of place you would want to get out of. It looks like the middle of nowhere.
You mean Tatooine?
Yeah, all right, I guess. Fair cop, it's Tatooine. So let's start getting into some of the characters. First of all, Alex, played by Lance Guest. I like that, unlike a lot of these kind of chosen one movies where he's chosen because of his family or because of some random element, that Alex is actually chosen for this because he has a skill, and it's a skill that you get the sense he has honed through a lot of practice. He has nothing else to do in this place, so he just keeps playing this arcade game and gets really good at it. And that's just not something you see in these kind of movies often. It seems like it's not usually a matter of practice and talent as much as, you're special because we say so. Come on this adventure.
Yes, you are the chosen one because we say you are, and therefore you have all of the characteristics we're looking for, or they're downloaded into your brain. But I want to bring this up specifically in this spot because it's just way too in my face, at least. There's another movie that did exactly this, a skill learned to the point where it's also video games and kind of an Excalibur-like prize, Ready Player One.
Yep.
It is virtually the same as The Last Starfighter. I mean, there are definitely some world-building differences in a way that makes the world of Ready Player One really interesting, and it's much more fully fleshed. But essentially, it's the same story.
And I haven't read it yet, but from what I understand, Ernest Cline's other book, Armada, is pretty much the same story. You mentioned Star Wars, and there's a lot of Luke Skywalker in this character, so definitely. Much. The guy he just wants to get off the farm and go fight the big battle somewhere, or just do something.
He wants to do something important. He wants to go to the city. He wants grander things than the deserts of Tatooine.
To me, I look at it and see a lot of George Bailey from It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, absolutely. That definitely in there.
Yeah, wants to leave his small town life, but this community depends on him. And he has this kind of simmering anger and resentment because he can't get out. Although, unlike Luke and George, I feel like Alex is handling it a lot better.
Yes.
He's not really a jerk. I mean, when it comes to, hey, you have to go fix my cable. Hey, you have to fix the power over here or fix this septic tank. He usually just eventually nods and goes, all right, I'll be right there, and does it without too much complaint.
Oh, my, that's going to take all day. I was going to Silver Lake.
Honey, I know. I'm sorry. I'm working lunch and dinner. I'm going to be in town all day.
Oh, all right. Okay, Ma. I'll do it.
Thanks, honey.
Look, you better just go ahead without me.
No, Alex, I'll stay.
No, it's okay. This will take a while. I'll catch up with you later.
Something that I found really interesting about the relationship between Alex and the rest of the community is that he's a child. He is maybe 17, possibly 18, and he's responsible for the upkeep of so much of the community. And that's a lot of burden to put on a child.
I noticed there's not a lot of middle-aged or young men on the trailer park. It's
right.
old and kids and him.
Yeah. And actually the same thing goes for his girlfriend, Maggie. Maggie is also 17, 18 perhaps, and she's taking care of her grandmother. It's that these on the cusp of being adults are being held back by responsibilities they feel they owe to the community. Especially because notably Alex's father is absent. We never find out if he passed away, if they divorced, if he ran out or something, but he's not there. Right. So Alex does have to kind of take on this responsible role of taking care of everybody to some degree, even if he doesn't want to. He's the reluctant hero. I like, though, that when he finally gets his chance to get away to another planet, he's just like, nope, he doesn't want any part of that at first. Well, again, reluctant hero, but I think... it's very Joseph Campbell, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, so is Star Wars, if we break it down. It's almost equivalent to going to the big city and seeing the big city for what it is and seeing things that you don't want to see and wishing that you were home again. And then going back home, having maybe gotten a fantastic job in an apartment and know that's where you belong in the city with your fantastic job and environments because you've become a different person. You've become the person you've always wanted to be. So I feel like Alex saying no at first was that first shock of seeing a different reality. And then he ends up succeeding and not earning his place there, but accepting that this is the kind of role he's wanted or needed. It does kind of remind me of my college experience. Get there, look at all these creepy aliens and go, no, I'm good, bye. Man, I wish I'd done that. As for Lance Guest, I really like him. I kind of wish he had gone on to do more. To me, he always feels like America's older brother. He feels like the big brother that everyone, I think, can relate to in some way. That the one who's just a little too cool to hang out with the younger brother, but he's not a bad guy. A little distracted because he's got other things going on. And I just like him as an actor. I remember him from Halloween 2 and then in the incredibly terrible Jaws the Revenge a few years later. Okay, I remember being 6 or 7 and thinking how cute he was. And having just watched it again, all I can think of is his mouth is open all the time. See, it wasn't until you said it, but now I can't not see it. He may have closed his mouth 3 times in the movie. I dare you to watch it and find more than 5 times.
Maybe it was a choice because I noticed he closed his mouth more when he's playing Beta. So maybe it was a way to distinguish the two sides. I don't know.
It's almost like you would want to do the opposite, though. Have your lead hero a bit less of the mouth breather.
At least he's not a blinker. I've seen that in movies where actors, every time they have a line of dialogue, they can't help but blink their way through it.
Oh.
It's really distracting. It was actually because he appeared in Halloween 2 that got guessed the role, because
Really?
Nick Castle is an associate of John Carpenter. So when Castle was looking for somebody for this movie, Carpenter suggested guest, and he was actually a great choice. I think I mentioned this on Gremlins. I kept thinking I want to see a buddy movie with him and Billy from Gremlins together.
That would be amazing.
Because, I mean, they're very similar. I feel like these two would get along really well.
Oh, he could pick him up in his shuttle and they could go find out where the gremlins came from.
There you go. Although I guess Eric Stoltz was considered at one point, so
That would have been interesting.
I could imagine him doing pretty well with it. Yeah, I think he would have been okay. So another role in an 80s classic that Eric Stoltz just kind of missed. The next big role is Grigg, played by Dan O'Hurley. And oh my God, Grigg's such a fun character. He's kind of the mentor to Alex, the spur to heroism that he needs. And while he's this military figure, he's also just really jolly and enthusiastic and is just what Alex needs to kind of finally get him motivated.
Yes. I agree with all of that, but he is also the Chewbacca figure. He is the supporting character who is not human, but has a bond with our main, or one of our main humans.
He's Chewbacca. I think he's got a little bit of Obi-Wan in there, too.
Yeah, if we're going to keep making parallels, and we have to, there's no way to talk about this film without making parallels to other films. A true mentor character isn't really there. It's split between like 3 people.
Yeah.
Which is a good way to handle it if you don't want to crib, but it makes certain beats a little strange.
I do like that Grigg is kind of a bit passive-aggressive when it comes to getting Alex in the game. He's like,
I had hoped that by putting you in the thick of battle, a great starfighter would emerge. But alas, perhaps there was never one within you to begin with. I shall take you home. You still may live a long and fruitful life back there. That is, until the Kodan reach Earth.
Dun, dun, dun.
And then when Alex suddenly suggests his plan, he's like, yeah, too bad there are no starfighters left to carry it out.
Aye, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Now, Dan O'Hurley, it's funny because I saw him in this and I thought he was great, but it wasn't until years later I realized who he was as an actor, that he's also the old man in the RoboCop movies and Conal Cochran from Halloween 3. He has that incredible melodious voice with that Irish accent. And I got to wonder if he's the guy who invented the laugh, that weird kind of hoarse chuckle that Grigg keeps doing.
It's wonderful.
It's so good.
And for some reason, it reminds me of the Enemy Mine character's laugh. And they don't resemble each other at all. But there's just something in the glee of it that's... Yeah. They're related.
I actually think the characters do have some similarities personality-wise. They're patient with these somewhat annoying and not very together humans. I also got to say that certain actors, when you put them in such a heavy makeup as O'Hurley is wearing here, don't really make it work. He really does a great job at just kind of playing with the makeup and making it feel real.
He wore the hell out of that makeup, and not a lot of people can. I mean, we've seen actors who barely have a prosthetic on their face and they just can't act around it.
I mean, it's a good makeup anyway because you can see so much of that expression coming through, but part of that is him just sort of willing it through the rubber. Mm-hmm. I love the moment where he comes down and meets the family because that's not exactly a scene you see in a lot of these movies.
No.
Most of the time, the great space mission has to be a secret. So to just be like, oh, and here's my alien friend Grigg, and he's just meeting grandma and meeting mom and
they all handled it pretty well after the first shock. I was surprised. They're like, yeah, we've seen a lot of shit around here, so I think we're okay.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Hey, Granny, put away that shotgun. What's wrong with you? This is my friend Grigg. I want you all to meet my friend here. Grigg, this is Mrs. Boone.
Hello.
Hello.
And this is Elvira.
Delighted.
Me too. How you doing?
I do well.
And this is Granny.
How do you do?
How do you do?
And this here's Otis.
A pleasure.
Any friend of Alex.
I think it's kind of a comment on how much they trust Alex, that as soon as he's like, no, he's okay, put the guns down, that they're okay with it.
It's a bit of an abrupt, yes, you're fine kind of thing. There was another movie that did that recently, and it really bugged me. Green Book. Green Book has the Mahershala Ali character comes at the very end and meets the rest of the family, who first look at him with shock, but then, oh, we welcome you with open arms, even though racism is a thing we've firmly established we are participating in for this entire movie. And the reactions between the trailer park people and the driver's family are the same. It's written. There's no transition, and there isn't time in this kind of film for that. So it almost makes me feel like the convention of having your other character meet your default characters, so basically an other meeting white people, it usually gets really uncomfortable because it's not shown in a realistic or remotely realistic way. And I can't believe that I'm saying I demand some realism from the Last Starfighter. But I do. I demand some realism with this particular introduction. Because as much as I wish it wasn't true, a lot of aliens are codified as African American characters. So therefore, they are the other that white people have to react to in one way or another. And this movie does not change that at all. They have one black man in the motorhome community, and he is very clearly playing this role of, the good-natured Negro who gives you some wisdom. This movie does not do any favors to anyone who isn't white.
Well, that's so many of these movies from the 80s. I mean, we talked about that with Gremlins, where the one black character gets killed by, he's the first guy to get killed by a gremlin.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in these sort of Amblin-era adventures, there wasn't much room for black people at all, sadly.
It's kind of gross. I think that the idea that there wasn't room for African-American characters speaks more to the fact that producers and casting directors and writers and directors didn't have to. And they didn't have to think about other stories other than the white story.
Or more importantly, they figured if they tried to do that, oh my God, it might scare away our white audience.
That too. So it's unfortunate.
So let's move on to the character who nearly steals the film and everything else, Centauri, played by Robert Preston.
Oh, Centauri. So the thing I love about Centauri, he is a used car salesman. You can't convince me of anything else.
Centauri's the name. I invented Starfighter, which is why I'm here.
It is?
It is. We have to talk about a matter of utmost importance. Step into my office. I must congratulate you on your virtuoso performance, my boy. Centauri is impressed. I've seen him come and I've seen him go, but you're the best, my boy. Dazzling. Light years ahead of the competition, which is why Centauri is here. He's got a little proposition for you. Are you interested?
I guess.
He's absolutely going to the ends of the earth to scrounge up the scrap parts to sell to other people.
See, I got a little bit of an old-fashioned talent scout or talent agent as well. Finding the talent, turning them over. Where's my cut? Where's my percentage? I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the point where, unlike all these aliens, he's dressed in this suit and hat. I mean, he looks like he stepped out of the 50s. He talks like somebody from a Howard Hawks movie. He's not going to try to put on airs. This is who he is.
I love that he knew he wasn't dying when he got shot. He knew he wasn't dying, but he knew that a death of a self-appointed mentor, because he absolutely dubs himself mentor, would spur Alex on to greatness, or to at least be a starfighter. He manipulates Alex over and over, and I really think that his character isn't as driven by the greater good more than it's driven by the want of money.
I agree, except for one thing. That moment when the Zandozan is still alive and tries to shoot Alex and Centauri jumps right in front of the bolt, I feels like there's a good chance he could have been killed, but he still does it anyway.
I don't know. I'm not certain if he is an eternal character. We don't know anything about his species, basically. So it's conceivable that no matter where he'd gotten shot, maybe he's an alien that can't be shot to death, but no matter where he's shot, he would have healed. Who knows?
I don't know. I think he got lucky because you can see that Beta reacts like, holy shit, he just shot Centauri. He's shocked not only that he got shot, but that Centauri actually did that. And based on how he reacts during that whole gunfight, I think Centauri is very aware that he could be shot and killed during that scene. So I feel like that much as he talks about money, there is still a side of him that is looking out for the greater good. When they were refining the script, Betchel actually suggested to Castle that they cast Robert Preston. And immediately, once he said that, they decided, oh, he could play him just like Harold Hill, his character from The Music Man, and they rewrote the part to kind of fit that persona.
That's amazing. I did think as I was watching it that the role could have been played by Sinatra, the role could have been played by Gene Kelly.
Yep, I could have pictured
Gene
that.
Kelly especially, because a lot of the look and attitude reminded me of his character from Xanadu.
And there's something of a musical vibe to Centauri. I could imagine him actually walking around in a musical and doing a little dance here and there.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he just, flits off with a new face and sings and dances in a chorus.
This was Preston's last screen role, and according to all the interviews with the rest of the cast, they just loved him. They said he was the most fun to work with, that he was just a complete gentleman. No pretense or anything like that, no prima donna treatment. He was just there and had a ball with it. To the point where all those scenes where he's turned into an alien, it's actually Preston wearing the makeup. He didn't get a stand-in to do it. He put it on.
That's admirable. Heavy makeup like that is not easy. And such a lengthy procedure to get it on and take it off that you really have to be devoted to a character to do it.
And he couldn't see anything either. I've seen footage of him having to be led to the set because once he had it on, he couldn't see a damn thing. But yeah, the moment when he takes off his face in the star car and turns, man, that made me jump. It was one of those things I couldn't watch for the longest time. And I know it's silly now because it just looks kind of goofy, but when you're a kid, the craziest things will scare the hell out of you. Okay, moving on to Maggie. This is where I really think the script does fall down a little bit because I feel like there's so much more that could be done with her character.
Yeah, she's just something that's there to tie him back to the trailer park. And of course, for a movie like this, you have to have a romantic interest. Unfortunately, you could completely cut her out of the script.
And I kept thinking, she has this thing about she doesn't want to leave the trailer park, that she kind of uses her grandmother as an excuse when Granny seems to be doing just fine without her. And I wish they had explored exactly what that is. I was thinking, all these scenes with Beta, how great would it have been if, because Beta's acting weird, she thinks it's Alex upset about the loan situation and finally unburdens herself about why she doesn't want to leave and how she was secretly a little relieved that he didn't get the loan because he wouldn't go that far away. And Beta's just like, huh, what? Just not getting it. The idea that you could have used Beta to illuminate her character a lot more and find out kind of what makes her tick and have her sort of work through that before Alex actually comes back in the final scenes.
I feel like we could have cut out Alex's mom and Alex's girlfriend and had this about the relationship between brothers.
That would have worked as well. I would have been fine with Maggie if there was more for her, but there's just not there. It almost feels like she's sort of Mary from It's a Wonderful Life, but instead of convincing Alex that he doesn't need to leave home, it's the reverse, that Alex has to convince her to leave home.
What's wrong?
Well, I guess it just hit me. You really are leaving here, aren't you?
Of course I'm leaving here. We're both gonna leave here.
Both of us, Alex?
Yeah. We talked about this. When I get to school, I'm gonna find a place and I'm gonna come back and get you.
Well, what about Granny?
Granny? The truth is, you're scared of leaving this trailer park.
I'm not scared of leaving this trailer park, Alex.
Hey.
And I gotta wonder, when she gets on that ship and flies to Rylos, the hell is she gonna do on Rylos? She's not a starfighter. She doesn't have these amazing skills. She's just sort of the girlfriend on an alien planet.
She's a space wife.
I do think it's funny that the character is played by Catherine Mary Stewart, who is in Night of the Comet, where she's an avid video game player. She's going nuts on Tempest trying to get all of the high scores to be her name. They should have just had her be that character.
That would have been wonderful. Probably not the same studio, though.
No, it isn't. I guess Ali Sheedy and Jennifer Jason Leigh were considered for the role, which I don't think there's enough really there for either of them, honestly.
I don't think there was enough there for any actor.
Yeah. That's the one part of the script that really feels just perfunctory, and I feel like there's so much more you could do there.
Or just do less.
Or
have him just not have a girlfriend. Have that be one of the reasons he wants to get away. Have him find an alien love.
Have him fall in love with Greg. They could
Whatever.
bond while they're in the spaceship.
They can have a bromance.
Yeah,
a romance.
exactly.
Who cares?
And of course, Lance Guest has a second role as Beta, another audience favorite. And it is really fun to see Guest get the chance to play something different. He plays him as this annoyed, snarky character who just really doesn't want to be on Earth, doesn't want to be in this situation. And it's tons of fun. I can see why they went back and added some extra stuff for him to do, because he is a lot of fun.
They really, and we've said this before, but they really should have given us more of that storyline. And that's really why I wanted to drop the mom, drop the girlfriend, focus on the brother relationship, because then we have an entire B storyline of the brother, Lewis, just baffled by his brother's behavior, not understanding what's going on, why is he different, and it would have been stronger.
Alex, what the hell's going on?
Louis, you're having a terrible nightmare. Go back to sleep. Louis!
And I know my role is not here to rewrite the movie, but I am rewriting the movie.
We do anyway. We do all the time, so... I can imagine that. You can imagine this whole storyline where it's the two of them fighting the Zandozan agents. Lewis finally able to run around with his little helmet and pop gun fighting real aliens.
Even the idea that he doesn't come back for Maggie, he comes back for his brother.
Oh, that would have been really sweet.
Yeah.
Damn it. Going back to that moment when Centauri takes the shot for Alex, I almost feel like that changes Beta, too. That Beta's there basically as the decoy, and he knows it's kind of his job, but he's clearly not thrilled with this idea that he's going to be hunted by these aliens, and yet he is willing to make the big supreme sacrifice when it seems like he doesn't totally have to. Like when he rams
didn't. He could have just jumped out of the truck.
Unless he just wanted to make sure it hit. But I almost feel like he was inspired by Centauri after seeing that, realizes kind of what the stakes are and that he has to keep Alex safe. So he's willing to go that extra mile and blow himself up to kill that agent. I thought that was another interesting turn. You can see any of the scenes that were added with Beta because Lance Guest is forced to wear this really terrible wig.
The wig itself works in the front, but once you get to the back, it has that weird gap where it's like no hair for a couple of centimeters and then just a tuft of hair. Like somebody took their hair, pulled it away from their neck, glued it, waited for it to dry, and it just stood there.
It's also just not curly enough. It doesn't have the same curl that he has for the rest of the movie.
I could overlook that. There's bad wig work in movies everywhere. There's actually an entire blog dedicated to the bad wigs of cinema.
Yeah, it's almost always a sign of reshoots that an actor cut their hair and they have to put on the bad wig, and that's how you can tell a movie's been tampered with. You can also see that he has a lot of makeup in those scenes because Guest got really sick, and apparently when they were shooting him otherwise, he looked super pale, so they had to compensate to some degree, and I think they overdid it in a few shots.
They definitely overdid it in a few shots, but you can see how ill he was because he looked a little gaunt, and you could see the dark circles under his eyes because it wasn't just a color, but it had that kind of indentation that the bags can have.
I also like how once Alex is missing, that he's off in space and Beta is taking his place, we get another reminder of how essential Alex is to this community because Beta can't do anything right. All of the repairs he's supposed to do, even if it's just holding an antenna for Otis to put on his trailer, he keeps messing it up. He just can't get any of this quite right. And Guest's reactions as he's trying to figure out what all of this human stuff means. When Maggie does the little eyebrow thing when talking about how they're going to go to the lake. And for the rest of the scene, you can see Lance Guest just moving his eyebrows like, what does that mean? What is that? His poaching the other guy's romantic dialogue.
Yes.
Come on. You're my Juliet, my Venus.
You're my Juliet. My Venus.
Alex?
All the other girls meant nothing to me. It was you. You.
Shut up and talk dirty to me.
The other girls meant nothing to me. It was you. You. Should I talk dirty to you now?
And then we have to talk about Lewis a little bit. Lewis Rogan, played by Chris Hebert. I feel as if his character got shortchanged, because I remember being a kid and just really identifying with him. Like, nobody really lets you do anything. You want to stay up. You don't want to be told what to do by your older siblings. And I had siblings with a greater age gap than Lewis and Alex, but it was far enough apart for them that I felt that. Like, I don't want my sister telling me what to do. But I think the script did him a disservice because the actor has a lot of charisma. The character had a lot of potential, and it just kind of went nowhere.
I love how invested he is in Alex in the game. When he's playing Starfighter, he's like, no, go over there, go over there. And then when he's about to break the record, he acts like he's his manager, like, everyone, keep back, give him some room.
Yeah.
They could have built on that, and that Lewis kind of wants to be part of this victory as well. And that's kind of implied by the last scene that maybe Lewis is going to be a starfighter as well, that he's going to get on the machine and start practicing and get to the point where he's going to be recruited as well.
It's implied, but since the war has been won, I'm sure starfighters are needed even after the war's won.
Xur escaped? The threat's still out there?
That's true. Darth Vader escaped. But his character was not given enough. After we saw this film, my sisters and I would go around saying,
diarrhea.
Crapola was the one for me. I love his...
For you? No, ours was diarrhea.
He's so good at throwing off those just sort of annoyed one-liners, yeah.
Oh, by the way, while we were watching that, I think I may have figured out how the word crapola came about.
Oh, really?
Maybe. There's the phrase shit and shinola.
Mm-hmm.
Kids can't swear. Crap-ola.
Somehow I always thought it was connected to granola.
Ew.
Some kid was forced to eat granola. I was like, what is this? Ooh, it's crapola. Ew.
Cute.
Apparently, Hebert was a bit of a method actor because that scene with the Playboys, he's not looking at censored magazines. He's looking at actual Playboys with the centerfolds.
That doesn't surprise me. It was the 80s.
I guess Nick Castle, when they were making the scene, was just like, you've seen this kind of stuff before, right? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's not legal.
Shh. Don't worry about it. We should also mention the sort of big villain of the movie, Norman Snow as Xur. I don't find Xur a very interesting bad guy.
Not at all.
Pretty weak. He doesn't really do much other than prance around with his scepter and fret about invade, invade.
He's a stock figure, and part of the problem with his character is that we never see him do anything dangerous. We never see him do anything vicious. We hear him talking a lot of shit, but we never see him really do anything.
The most we see is that he has a guy's head melted. That's about it.
But he has that happen.
Yeah.
He himself is not a threat.
The implication is that they've joined with him because he has the secret to getting through the frontier, the big space wall that they have surrounding all these friendly systems. But we never really see what it is. I mean, we just see them kind of beaming their way through that wall with the ship, shooting a laser at it. So it's not clear what he's contributing. And I get the sense that the two Kodan officers on the bridge are really just done with this guy and don't like him at all. But the problem is they're not really all that interesting as villains either.
No, not at all. In fact, in a different sort of script, our false villain, Xur, would have been overthrown a little earlier, and then our real villains, the other guys on the command ship, would have been the real, true evil.
And they keep hinting about the Kodan Emperor, so I wonder if they were trying to set up, if there was a sequel, he would be the real big villain that we'd see later.
Oh my gosh, guys. Even in the 80s, movies were trying to set up franchises. Please just stop. This movie failed where Star Wars succeeded in so many ways, and this is one of them. I mean, Darth Vader is iconic. He has powers. We see him physically crush people. We see him throw people around. He is a threat. He is a moving threat. But the most we see, honestly, I think screen time of Xur is a hologram. I'm pretty sure that's the longest we see him on screen.
It's certainly the most lines he has in the movie, yeah.
And he comes across as petulant rather than evil.
Why have you returned?
I have returned for the good of all Rylands.
With an armada of Kodan warships behind you?
There are some Rylands who would welcome me, Father.
Star League justice put down your Xurian cult. Your followers are few and scattered.
Star League!
are tributes for weak worlds not worthy to be our equals.
That is for the Rylands to decide, and not for a dangerous and evil child such as yourself.
He's like the whiny prodigal son, basically.
Yeah, he is. And that doesn't work because that arc is never completed or even half begun. It's just kind of like, oh, well, this is the kid of this guy, so it's father against son. And the son is evil. Why? Because we say he is.
We're told that there's like a Zurian cult that met Ryland Justice. So if they made him like a cult leader, like he's got charisma or he's some kind of religious fanatic, that might have been something.
And he had none of that.
No.
And we know what's going on with Vader. We know he's a true believer. We know he's the dark side of the Force. We know he's a physical threat. These are all things that make a great villain, a great iconic villain. And I'm touching to Star Wars again just because this movie borrows so much from it. It just begs comparison.
You know who he reminds me of? Viserys from Game of Thrones. Daenerys' brother, the one who gets the golden crown.
Yes.
Always, running around going, give me my crown, give me my whatever. But he's not impressive, he's not intimidating
And he's
at all.
not earning it.
And he's not earning it. See, Zur needed a molten lead crown at some point. They should have given him a molten lead scepter.
Yes.
Like that scepter, I remember it was on the movie poster and it was such a big part of the promotion, and he handles it and a little thing pops out, which seems very phallic and kind of creepy, and that's about it.
We did see him use it once, right?
He hit one of the guards in the face when they're taking him away. That's about it.
Oh my god, that's so stupid. I thought maybe I had looked down to take a note and he'd actually used it, and it was some sort of magic wand of sorts, magic club.
They could have worked that in the story, like it's a device he built to get through the frontier.
Yeah.
And they build it for him and he brings it to the bridge and goes, aha.
Again, rewriting the story. This piece, building off of what you have, this silly piece of plastic that he's throwing around, could have been one of those I'm hiding the weapon in plain sight. So this could have been his, like, oh, that's just the thing he carries around. Oh, wait, it's a huge weapon.
Yeah, that would have been something.
Kind of like when the cane is also a sword. It's a weapon hidden in plain sight. Impressive makeup, though. I really want to say something positive about the movie right now. So I know I'm jumping ahead, but very impressive makeup.
There's a lot of cool creatures for the budget here.
Yes.
Some neat designs. That Cthulhu-looking guy that Alex accidentally steps on his tentacles. I actually like his design. Or the weird insect guy sitting right next to him that Alex starts chatting up. The idea that Alex is at this point where he's just talking to this insect like, okay, all right, this is what we're doing, fine.
I accept this as reality.
Exactly. And I do like the design of the Zandozans, the evil agent guys.
Yes.
They're pretty creepy. That scene where he attacks the cop and sort of like, I don't know if he vaporizes him, but I remember that gave me a particular nightmare for years that I'd totally forgotten about until we were watching this again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It was kind of cool to remember.
I'm not sorry.
Yeah, don't be sorry. The design of the aliens and all of the ships was by Ron Cobb, who you might not know his name, but you've seen his work in tons of movies. He designed stuff for Alien, Conan the Barbarian, Real Genius, Aliens, The Abyss, Total Recall, Firefly. And he's known for designing stuff from an engineering perspective. So, I mean, he won't just draw a ship. Yeah, he thinks of how each thing will function, how each thing works. Of course, probably one of the big primary designs he made for this is the Gunstar, which is very X-Wing-like in its design, but I still really like this ship design. It looks really cool in flight.
I know we had a debate about this while we were watching the movie, and it's unfortunate we weren't taping at that moment, but it is very X-Wing, but its gunnery is very Millennium Falcon.
See, I remember Cobb talking about how he wanted to change up the Star Wars thing of just kind of shooting, so he used this device that you see in Blue Thunder as well, this idea that where you move your seat will move all of the guns so you can shoot in every direction pretty much.
That's actually sort of, I feel like it's sort of what they did with Star Wars, where there is a multi-directionality of the gunnery. I will admit The Last Starfighter took it more than a few steps forward in that it could happen spherically.
Yeah, I wish we had seen more of the seat actually going up and down and stuff. We see it a little bit, especially during the Death Blossom scene, but it's a really cool idea, and I wish they had worked that in a little bit more. And the same with the idea of the display, he can still see where the ships are through the hull.
I also love the detail that you have to be staring straight ahead to see the illusion, basically.
Yeah.
So it brings to mind a lot of the holograms that were coming up in retail at that point on trading cards and such.
Cobb also designed things like the Zandozan ship that we see on Earth, which actually was a design that he didn't end up using for Alien.
Oh.
It's one of the background devices that never got built for that movie, so he just kind of dusted it off and used it here. And the bridge of the Kodan ship, which he meant to look like a circuit. You can see like the other Kodan officers are almost kind of plugged into it, which I think is a cool idea. This idea that maybe there's some sort of computerized hive mind. And the Star Car, which, boy, I remember that looked really high-tech back in 84.
So you mean the DeLorean?
The boxy DeLorean, yes, which apparently did not actually work as well as we see on screen. That when they were shooting with it, it was basically sheet metal mounted on like a Volkswagen engine, and it would go really slowly and really noisily. So they had to speed it up and put in the cool sound effect for it to work. But it works.
Right.
I remember at the time that was pretty neat.
Yeah, it's early computer age, so what felt so stunning and how did they do that when we were children? Now that we understand that visual language, we know how they did it, and it doesn't look that great, but for the sake of talking about the film, it's important to note that it made extensive use of computer animation. And
yeah, actually, so let's jump into that. That's one of the biggest things this movie is known for, is that this was one of the first films to really use such a massive amount of CGI to represent real objects, unlike Tron, where it's the inside of a computer, so it can look a little angular and blocky and weird.
Yeah.
These are supposed to be actual real ships and real planets and space and everything like that.
There are parts of it that hold up really well. There was, I believe, in the very beginning when we're seeing, it could be Earth. Was it Earth?
It starts on Rylos and then pulls
Maybe
back
it was
to
Rylos.
Earth.
That scene, the very first scene we have of moving from one planet to another, whatever they were, held up for me well enough because I questioned, I'm like, well, did they do that with models? Because it looked good. Like how things with models hold up better over time. Yeah. But there's definitely some stuff that does not work at all anymore. All of the DeLorean stuff doesn't work. I'm just going to call it a DeLorean because it's a DeLorean. You can definitely see looks terrible.
Yeah, they were doing what they could. When they did the effects for this, they did 27 minutes of CGI, which is a lot. If you consider going back to Jurassic Park, there's 6 minutes of computer-generated footage in that movie, just 6.
Wow.
This is nearly a half hour's worth, and it's on screen for a long time, for a lot of shots.
So you get a really good look at it.
Yeah. It was created on a Cray XMP supercomputer, which was state-of-the-art at the time. It was the same type of computer that what would become Pixar used for some of their early short films like The Adventures of Andre and Wall-E B. Or do you remember that Marvel logo where Spider-Man jumps onto the Marvel thing?
Yeah.
They created that too with
wow.
that computer. And when they did this, they didn't know if it was going to work. They shot all these interiors of the ships and the Star Car and everything, and they handed it over, and they prayed that this was actually going to come out, because if it didn't, they were kind of screwed. Mm-hmm. Now, you just finish a movie, you toss it off to the animators, and whatever, they'll like, we'll fix it with CGI, it's fine, it doesn't matter. Back then, that was a big risk. But it saved them a lot of money compared to how much this would have cost with motion control models and cell animation.
And man-hours.
And man-hours and all the traditional optical printing. I was thinking about that, like that shot where the Gunstar is turning around to take on all of the Kodan ships that are in formation. If you consider how many ships are in that shot, if you tried to do that with models, the optical printing on that would just be ridiculous. It would have been so weird. But with CGI, they could do it. Once they designed one Gunstar, they just used that and cloned it, and they could have as many Gunstars they wanted in the scenes. The Gunstar itself was like 750,000 polygons.
Wow.
Which doesn't seem like much now, but at the time, that was huge. It took them 3 months to actually build it in the computer. And occasionally things would go wrong, like ships would fly backwards, other objects would appear within other objects. They never got certain textures right. Like I know when they have that scene where they're flying through the asteroid, they weren't really pleased with how it looked there. And it could have looked better, but they just ran out of money and ran out of time to render it a little bit more detailed. I will say, I think these effects work well just for this movie, just because of the theme of the film. The idea of this video game that it turns out is actually representing reality, and when Alex gets out into the reality of this universe, it looks like a video game.
It does work in that context, absolutely.
Also, although young Sherlock Holmes gets the credit for having the first CGI character, I think this film kind of beats it to the punch, because they made...
Who? Who is the fully...
The stained glass knight, the one who jumps off of the church window.
See, I remember watching that movie at least once a month for, I don't know, probably a year or so. It was probably also more than once a month. But I forgot about that night until right now. The one scene I remember from that movie very clearly is the claymation food.
Oh, the custard tarts?
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, that movie kind of gets the credit for the first computer-generated character. I think you might have to give it to this one because they actually made little CGI versions of Alex and Greg that you can see in the ship every once in a while moving around.
Okay, I'll give you that, but I think if we're going to go that nitpicky with character, we should amend the night to talk about it being really clearly seen and not just a couple of little guys.
All right, fair enough.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, honestly, if we were to go to be really true to the idea, Bit from Tron would probably be the first fully CGI character.
True.
If you consider him a character, since he only just says yes and no. All right, you mentioned the music score. Let's talk about the music by Craig Safin. I love the score of this movie. Yes, it is derivative as hell.
No, it's a great score. It's very evocative of all of the things I loved in childhood because it's derivative of all of the things I loved in childhood. But as an independent piece of music, the themes are really catchy, really energetic, and beautiful.
I mean, when that first main theme starts off, it pulls you right into the movie
It does.
Immediately.
It does. And as a child, loved it. I still like it now, but I didn't get halfway through the opening scene before I had to have you rewind it because I was like, did I really just hear Indiana Jones in there?
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did.
I also like that main theme, once you slow it down, it actually makes a pretty good sort of romantic theme for Alex as well. It's very adaptable. And let's talk a little bit about the director, Nick Castle. Like I said, he had a previous association with John Carpenter, and he would go
just a little one.
Just a wee bit.
He was the Shape in the first Halloween, and then, of course, the Halloween 2018.
I love that they brought him back.
Yeah, me too. It's important. And that's another podcast.
It still doesn't really rank with his amazing performance as the Beach Ball alien from Dark Star, though. That was such a moving portrayal of alien life. As a writer, he also co-wrote Escape from New York with John Carpenter. His first film was Tag the Assassination Game with Bruce Abbott and Linda Hamilton. After this, he'd do The Boy Who Could Fly, another really fun, great 80s sort of backyard adventure film.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really sweet movie.
And I can't remember how he could fly. Was he also an alien?
We never found out. He just could fly.
I do remember the Sunday night Disney thing that they had every week for a while. You'd get the Disney movie on Sunday nights.
I remember they had to put a warning on this one that this film includes certain Hollywood stunts and kids don't try to fly at home.
Do not jump out of your windows. Children aren't meant to fly.
He'd also go on to co-write Hook and direct the Dennis the Menace movie, Major Payne, and Mr. Wrong. So in the late 80s, early 90s, he was really in for that kind of gentle, fun family comedy thing.
I appreciate that. There are too few directors willing to put their career in that space. It's a lot like how there are directors who will only direct what they consider to be Oscar-winning pieces, heavy dramas, and people dying. And besides, like, Ron Howard for a very long time, I can't think of a director. Oh, I just did. Chris Columbus. They're of the same directing pool.
I feel like Joe Dante has that a little bit, although he can go a little bit into the dark, too.
Yeah, a little bit. I do feel like Joe Dante has a lot more range.
Yeah, but even now, I think a lot of the family adventure films like that, they don't have that good-natured quality to them.
No.
Sometimes they come across as little mean-spirited.
There's a lot of innocence in the neighborhood 80s films.
Yeah, and one of the things that really still works for me with this movie, that, I mean, it's impossible to hate it just because it's so earnest. It's so trying so hard to just be nice and fun and sweet.
We don't have any mean characters except the people that we have established as bad. We don't have a neighbor who's cranky and mean and awful. Even if they're having a bad day or something isn't working, they're still very neighborly about it.
The closest we come is that Jack Blake guy who's almost set up as a romantic rival for Alex. But even then, nothing really much comes of it.
Yeah, and they're friends. They hang out all the time. He's just kind of an antagonistic friend.
I do like that in the last scene, after Alex lands this spaceship and steps out, he's still like shaking his head like, yeah, I don't believe this whole space thing. Sure, whatever.
Oh, one little detail I wanted to touch on, and I thought it was a really great one. I believe it's in the beginning, you can hear a radio playing, and it's a woman who's talking about having seen an alien ship and how people kind of passed it off as swamp gas, and it's not swamp gas. And I couldn't hear everything, but I gathered that it was an alien sighting and that she was very unhappy with the explanation for it.
I noticed that. I had never heard that in the film before. It was a really great little touch. I don't know exactly if it ties into the plot at all, because no aliens would have been on Earth at that point.
Right, but I think it's nice that we're establishing the possibility. Like, putting it in your head, like, oh, well, you know how this is happening now. People have alien sightings all over the place. Well, this is what's going to happen when we finally meet them.
It lets us know that we're in kind of this science fiction universe.
Yeah.
I like that the Starfighter arcade game itself almost sort of becomes a character. That once Alex beats the record, it starts doing weird things. It starts freaking out right before Centauri comes, which I assume was it sort of sending a message to him to come down. But also, once the Xandozans show up, it starts making noises to kind of alert Alex that they're around, and actually removes the disguise of one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if Centauri programmed it in as a little defense mechanism for whatever Starfighter candidate they might find.
I understood Beta to have been made by Centauri. I could be totally wrong.
That's kind of the vibe I got, or at least that he's a manufactured thing that Centauri bought somewhere.
So Centauri has the capability to make an awareness in machines. So it's very possible that he did, and that the Starfighter machine did have independent thought.
Okay, so some trivia for the movie. Castle had actually wanted to start the movie with the Universal logo, but with Rylos in place of Earth, but Universal refused to give permission to mess with the logo. They were really weird around this period of doing fun stuff with the logo. Even Steven Spielberg wasn't allowed to for Jurassic Park years later.
There were actually quite a lot of variations of the logo. The Xanadu logo, which I can't believe I'm talking about Xanadu twice for this movie, was a recreation of the 1927 logo, and as the ship went around the Earth, it would go to the next logo and the next one and the next one over and over until it evolved to a spaceship.
Okay, so John Carpenter couldn't do anything with the logo for The Thing.
But
Spielberg
Xanadu
couldn't do anything for Jurassic Park, but Xanadu could.
Yes, it was one of the most, and still is in a lot of ways, the most impressive use of the logo. It's a shame that they were sticklers about it during that period of time, but it happened.
A more graphic version of the spy's head being melted was filmed but trimmed to get a PG. I guess originally we would have seen the whole head pretty much melt off. And I do think it does feel like it cuts off a little early when you're watching it.
It does cut off early, but to get the rating, I understand, because the target audience was basically us.
And it's creepy enough. It creeped me out as a kid. I don't think you need too much more on that one. When Alex is looking at his family photograph, his dad in that shot is played by the cinematographer King Baggett.
Huh.
Meanwhile, in Grig's photographs, all the shots of his wife are actually just Dan O'Hurley in the same makeup wearing different frocks.
That's amazing. And we did have a little discussion during the movie about how strange it is that the wife, like aliens have to have a wife or female partner, is wearing some very gender-specific clothes. Pink ruffles. There may have been pearls. I don't remember quite. But heteronormative, I guess, expands out into the universe.
I think he called her his waifoid.
Waifoid, yes, that's exactly what it was.
He doesn't actually use the pronoun her, though, so you never know. Maybe he would wear those kind of outfits, too, on certain days.
Perhaps, but for the sake of the movie, no. No, this was definitely a gender role issue.
Just before Alex first bumps into Grig during the briefing, if you listen really closely, you can hear a voice on a loudspeaker start referencing Major Kong's dialogue from Dr. Strangelove about, if you look under your seat, you'll find a standard airman survival kit. I never noticed that before this, but I love that little detail. The Rylos celebration at the end had to be reshot as well, because the original one had them going into this massive amphitheater and getting medals, and it looked a lot like the end of Star Wars.
Unfortunately, what they ended up with also looks a lot like Star Wars. Less so than the photographs, the stills we ended up looking at, but it still is very much this is the moment your heroes get their reward. Their reward is fame and acclaim.
I do like, though, that they reduce it down to Alex talking to Indura, kind of the Rylan leader, and Grig and Centauri, and not this massive ceremony instead. And it's just
But they do on a cliff in front of what we are supposed to believe is thousands of people. But when we are given an on-eye level shot with these people, looks more like 4 or 5.
All dressed in like these black bodysuits, kind of going, yay! But
yeah.
I just feel like the staging of it was a lot better in this version. It's bigger, it's more open, and it breaks up the Star Wars thing a little bit by turning it into a scene about them trying to convince Alex to stay rather than here's your medal.
Especially bringing it into nature.
Yeah. And my favorite, in The Boy Who Could Fly, there's a scene where Fred Savage is playing a video game, and what video game is he playing? Starfighter. So technically, the Fred Savage character from that movie might be recruited in the future. As for the legacy of the film, this is the weirdest thing. Inspired a stage musical first mounted in 2004 and then in 2006 with the cooperation of Jonathan Betchwell. I can't imagine this working as a musical, but okay. So I bet Centauri probably has a couple great song numbers.
There are so many movies that have been made into musicals that I think how, and somehow they do well enough that people love them. So I'm just going to roll with it.
If they could give Carrie a shot, I guess why not Starfighter? An actual arcade version of the game seen in the film was being developed with Atari, and it was going to use 3D polygonal imagery like in the movie. But Atari, when they saw the film in post-production, didn't think it was going to be enough of a hit and pulled the plug, which is a bummer.
It's a bummer, but it was probably a wise decision on their part, considering the E.T. thing had probably just happened.
Yeah, but maybe it would have been like a Tron situation where the arcades do better than the movie.
Yeah, but I think they were a little gun-shy after the E.T. debacle.
Yeah, maybe. I still maintain that E.T. game wasn't bad.
I never had a chance to play it.
I think it's pretty good. It's a little more complex than most games of the period. It's not impossible. I beat it as a kid tons of times. It's fun. I don't know what people are complaining about. They made too many, sure, but...
Excuse me.
It's not a bad...
The E.T. game was fine.
It was fine, thank you. A home console version of the game was being developed for the Atari 2600 and 5200 systems and their home computers, but eventually it was just released as Star Raiders 2, and the 2600 game was released as Solaris, so it never quite made it.
I did play Solaris.
There was an NES game, but it wasn't anything like the game in here. It was converted from an old Commodore 64 game called Uridium. And this is the one that kills me. Galoob was planning a whole line of action figures based on all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it to prototype, but they never went into production. Unfortunately, they changed their minds, and then after they changed their minds, realized the movie was enough of a hit that they probably should have. But by then it was too late. So I was robbed of having a toy Gunstar and a little toy Alex and Grig. You can still see pictures of the prototypes online, though. They're pretty cool. Since then, a game company called Rogue Synapse has actually created a PC adaptation of the game seen in the movie that you can get for free for download. And they actually built an arcade cabinet version, too, that looks just like the one in the movie. I haven't actually tried installing it or trying it, but based on the screenshots, it looks pretty amazing. I mean, it is the exact setup from the film.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been a lot of attempts to make a reboot or a sequel. Seth Rogen, Steven Spielberg, both tried, but the screenwriter, Jonathan Betchwell, kind of dragged his heels on it.
Does he still retain the rights to the story?
It gets a little weird. He has the sequel rights.
Okay. Does he have remake rights?
Universal has distribution rights and can make a remake, but Lorimar Pictures, the other production company, was bought by Warner Brothers, and they have international rights.
Oh, that's the worst.
So it becomes this weird morass of things.
Yeah.
However, screenwriter Gary Whitta, who worked on Book of Eli, After Earth, and Star Wars Rogue One, posted concept art for a reboot that he's working on with Betchwell, so maybe they're finally going to make it. We've had a couple of these 20, 30 years later sequels like Tron Legacy. I'd love them to do one. Bring back Lance Guest as Alex. He's the general of the Ryland fleet, and he's looking for the next group of recruits. You could give him the Distinguished Mentor death 3/4 of the way through the film.
I'm actually going to go rogue on this and suggest that this movie would benefit from a remake.
I want them to bring everyone back.
I know.
At least bring Lance Guest back.
You can bring an actor back and have them not play the same character they played.
See, I think you could do it as one of those sequels where if you haven't seen the original, it's fine. It's set up on its own, that you can just enjoy it as its own thing. But it's quietly a sequel. Sort of like The Color of Money was the sequel to The Hustler, but if you haven't seen The Hustler, it's fine. You'll just enjoy the movie. Okay, what's your favorite scene?
So my favorite scene is not a scene. It is a moment, and it is anytime Grig laughed. There was something about the way his face just opened up and pulled against the makeup, you could tell just how forceful this laughter is, and that while he does laugh occasionally, this is just so amusing, and it's infectious.
My apologies, Starfighter. Star Navigator First Class Grig, at your service, sir.
It almost strikes me after our last episode, it's like the friendly version of the Pod People scream.
Yes, it is.
My favorite, and this goes back to when I first saw the movie, it hasn't changed, is the Death Blossom scene.
It is gorgeous.
It's really cool. It's such a great idea, this weapon of last resort. They'll just fire everything at once.
Easy, easy. Wait till they're all in Death Blossom range. Fire!
Now, whenever I play Asteroids, I have to play it Death Blossom style, which is just me spinning and shooting randomly and hoping I don't get blown up.
Nice.
Inevitably, I get blown up, but it feels really cool for a little while there. Okay, what are your recommendations?
Yeah, I have 3. One I've already mentioned, so I'll just briefly mention it again. The Ready Player One. Human wins by skill, video games, blah. You get it. Flight of the Navigator.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, and another Disney film, actually. And just because it does very similar things, Ender's Game.
I was thinking that one actually ties in quite a bit.
The idea of simulation and being trained by a game, in essence, but being trained for war.
All very good choices, yeah. All right, I'll go with one I mentioned in terms of the Star Wars space opera craze, Battle Beyond the Stars, which, if you haven't seen it, is a lot of fun. It's a Roger Corman production that's a remake of Seven Samurai in outer space, as Richard Thomas has to assemble a group of these 7 aliens to help him fight this invading army. It has George Papard as a literal space cowboy. It has this great score from James Horner. It has special effects by James Cameron. It's really silly, but a lot of fun. Next, I'd go with a documentary, The King of Kong. In terms of people setting video game records, that's kind of a fascinating film about the weird subculture and the pettiness that it results sometimes. And I'll also go with another video game themed thriller, Cloak and Dagger with Henry Thomas.
Yes, I loved that movie so much as a kid. So much.
I remember it being...
I was a little nerd.
It's kind of dark for a kid's movie. There's like people being shot and
Yeah.
murdered left and right in that one. But
well, it's intrigue, it's spies, it's assassins, it's a different animal to the space operas.
Last time we were at the Fun Spot, the big arcade museum, I actually got to play the arcade game that they feature in the film as Cloak and Dagger, and wow, I sucked at it.
Well, we've established that you're a casual gamer.
I know. I am not a true gamer, thank you very much.
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I haven't even played Fortnite.
Yeah, I haven't played so many games in such a long time, and then I'm like, because I have other responsibilities, bitches.
I'm content to play like replay games that I've beaten a long time ago.
Me too. Isn't that weird? Like it's very infrequent that I feel the call to play a new game, mainly because I play games to shut my brain off, and a lot of newer games require me to be very engaged in the game, and that's not quite the escapism I need.
We have a bunch of PS4 games I've never even tried, but I'll play Galaga all day long.
Yeah.
Okay, that ends our discussion, but not the conversation. If you'd like to have your say about The Last Starfighter or feel that we missed something, check out the comment section for this episode on www.cinemaspection.com and start talking. You can also like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at CinemaSpection. For our personal accounts, I'm at Timosaurus R.
I'm at The Lady Latte.
Our show is available on, well, it was available on iTunes. I don't know what the current format is now.
It's in whatever Apple
Music, I think it is
possibly
now. Hopefully we're still on there.
We should track it down.
We should check it and make sure. Yeah.
We will.
And Stitcher, so if you like what you hear, please subscribe. And if you have a moment, please leave us a review there. We appreciate your feedback, and your reviews help increase our visibility. We'll be back to discuss another movie next time. Until then, thanks for listening. Remember to keep watching closely. There's more to a movie than what's on the screen. may the luck of the 7 Pillars of Gulu be with you at all times.